The movie opens up, and we see a woman checking out her pregnancy. Later, she is taking her class on history. In the next scene, Belinda goes into the room and asks for Stuart, which is her boss. She is told that Stuart isn't around and she should leave a note. At the parking lot, she is worried about not finding the baby's heartbeat, and Norman calms her down. The doctor tells them the baby is okay, and the heart is beating. At their home, Belinda moves a chair and Norman watches her. Belinda talks with Norman about her job, how she's slowly losing her job. She complains that the baby is messing things up. Norman receives a call from an unknown number. It turns out to be his stepmom. He tells her about his stepmom and how she mistreated him. Norman also tells her about his father's stomach cancer and how his stepmom believes in signs and wonders. He tells her that his stepmom may not approve of their relationship. He tells her they should forget them and focus on their family. Linda walks into a room and hears a crying baby. Norman calls out to her and she realizes it's her imagination. He asks her about the baby cap and she said she found it on the carpet. She goes into a room and puts the cap in a box. She is waiting for Frank the next day. She then gets annoyed and quits the job. At their home, Linda arrives from shopping and Norman tells her that his dad is dead. They attend his funeral, and as they're about leaving, a man calls Norman and hugs him. Norman introduces Belinda to him. He tells Norman that Solange wants to see him, but Norman hesitates. He convinces Norman to follow him. They meet Solange, and Belinda helps to remove her veil. She shocks Linda by telling her the gender of her baby. In a room, Norman is reading the will of his father, and he finds out Solange is giving him all the money. She tells him she also sold the house, and that all she wants in return is for Norman to allow her leave with him. Norman tells Belinda he doesn't want Solange to live with him. She convinces him and tells him that they need the money, and he should learn to change. Solange moves in with them, and they tell her room is upstairs. She tells them she can't stay in the upstairs room and would prefer the baby's room instead. Belinda and Norman talk about it, and Belinda convinces Norman to let Solange stay in the downstairs room. Solange and Belinda have a conversation. They talk about Solange's past, and later Solange questions Belinda artifacts. She tells Belinda she works in the spirit and she knows how to make things right. They then show Solange her room. Solange heads for Norman's mom chair, and this upsets Norman. She then tells Belinda she would like to purchase some furniture and ask her to leave. At dinner, Solange ensures they say the grace. She tells Belinda the food is salty and asks what the baby's name is. She ridicules Belinda's parents a bit. She puts her hand on the baby and is speaking a different language. She mentions Wallace, startling the couple a bit. She comes up with a name, and it tells them to name the child Lori after her husband, Lawrence. At night, Belinda hears some chants and sees an ominous bathtub. She realizes it's her imagination and asks Norman how Solange knew about him. He tells her not to worry and come back to bed. The next day, Belinda goes to Solange's room and finds her on the ground. She helps her up, and Solange tells her the spirit took her away. She says Belinda is starting to see things, and it won't stop unless she prays. Belinda talks to Norman about the baby's name and how she feels Solange is scared of getting old. The next day, Belinda sees Solange hurrying. She asks if everything is all right and finds out Solange wet the couch. Solange begs her and asks her not to tell Norman. During dinner, Norman asks about their day. Belinda tells Norman that Solange is incontinence, and this upsets Solange. The next day, Solange is crying for help, and Belinda goes to help her. The couples find out that Solange has messed herself up on the toilet. They argue over cleaning her up, and then take her to the bath. Norman complains he is late, and he's going to have to leave Belinda alone. He takes his leave, and Belinda goes to join Solange in the bath. She asks why Solange kept the necklace on her statue, and she replies it's for Christians. She says they're not so different and both knows what it feels like to be persecuted. Belinda tells Solange that she hasn't been able to afford anything until she showed up. Belinda falls down and she is rushed to the hospital. She is operated on and gives birth. She then returns home and finds a group of people in her home. They see her down on the chair, puts hands on her belly, and starts speaking in tongues. This freaks Linda and she asks them to stop. She complains to Norman about the visitors, and Solange tells her it was the deal she made with Norman. Belinda is upset that Norman didn't tell her about the deal. She tells Norman she doesn't want the old furniture, and that Norman should tell Solange to remove her things from where she kept her statue. The family are having dinner, and Belinda rejects the food Solange made. They get into a heated argument about Solange being a racist. Solange confesses she's racist and starts throwing a tantrum. The next day, Belinda finds Solange without her walking sticks, and Solange starts pretending. Belinda goes downstairs and takes Solange to her chair. Solange tells Belinda she knows what she's feeling and that Belinda knows her. She takes a certificate and Solange says she can tear it, but only if she stretches her hand. She tells Belinda about a daughter she had who died at an early age. She also tells Belinda about her own dead son and that her son is talking to her. This startles Belinda and she leaves the room. The baby is crying and Belinda tries to calm down. Belinda notices once the necklace is brought close to the baby, she stops crying. She tells Norman Solange is taking over the house and she wants to replace Belinda. Norman stands up and goes to tear Solange's certificate. Solange calls for help. Belinda calls Norman telling him she can't handle it anymore and she's losing her mind. She goes downstairs and sees Solange holding the baby. She collects the baby and asks what Solange did. Solange tells her that Lori is a child of God. She asks if Belinda fears God and she should fear her also. She keeps pushing Belinda. She then purposely hits her head and starts bleeding. Norman tells her Solange said Belinda hit her. Belinda explains it's clearly lie, but she can't stand Solange being in the house again. She questions Norman about Solange's dead daughter, and he said she never had any. He pleads with Belinda to bear with him and that he will soon get the job. Belinda is cleaning, and the man from the funeral comes to visit. Belinda complains about Solange and how she's controlling everyone. The man tells her that Solange isn't evil, and she has helped him get over smoking. Belinda tells the man that Solange wants to be the only mother. He tries to reason with her and tells her Solange paid her mortgage and is trying to help her. Solange calls Belinda to help her get into her seat. She tells Solange that she owns the house, but Solange says not according to the bank. She calls Belinda for some water, and Belinda asks about her daughter before dumping the water on her body. They are having dinner when Solange calls Norman. Belinda tells him not to go, but he goes anyway. In the night, Belinda goes to Solange's room and starts seeing things. Norman comes down and asks if Belinda hurt Lori. She proves she isn't the one, and they go to Solange. Norman asks if Solange has been pretending, and she laughs. He tells her she can't live with him anymore. She asks him to come closer, and she spits on his face. The next morning, Belinda is happy to see Lori suckling. Belinda goes downstairs and finds out Solange is dead. She gathers Solange things and tries to destroy them, but in the end, she cannot. Belinda is getting ready for an interview, and Norman comes to talk to her. He asks her if she feels weird using Solange money to purchase things, and she says Solange got what she deserved. Belinda gets startled by the sound of Solange canes and tells Norman to get rid of the chair. Belinda drives to work singing. She has no regret. In the interview, Belinda expresses how she feels and says being with a mother-in-law and newborn was difficult. She then flashbacks to Solange, and we see her approach and kill Solange. The movie comes to an end with an evil smile.